Hi everyone, in this video we're going to cover the common mistakes that we make when we're solving the math section of the exam. This works for the SAT, the ACT, the GMAT, the GRE, or any exam that has a math section. It works in general for math, like for math, for high school math or whatever other math exams you may have been taken, but it works or is especially important for standardized tests and for tests with multiple choices. So this is a list of the common mistakes. This is the list that you want to copy, right now. You can pause the video and copy or copy after the video. But in this video, we're going to develop each item of this list, okay? But mainly just like the process of elimination, you just want to know what the categories are. So we're going to work on knowledge mistakes, understanding mistakes, procedure mistakes, silly mistakes, and just too long. So we're going to jump into it. We're going to see the first type of mistake, which is the knowledge mistake. Now, each of these mistakes, or the name of each of these mistakes, is pretty self-explanatory. So knowledge mistakes are mistakes about knowledge, which means are things you don't know. You're making a mistake because you don't know. You either don't know the topic or don't know the formula. Why am I separating this? Because you may know the topic and you may know all the other formulas except for this very specific formula that you need for the very specific problem that you have encountered, right? Now, there may be other type of knowledges, okay? But basically, most of the mistakes fall into these categories. You either don't remember anything about the topic or you just don't remember the very specific thing that you need. So we're going to see an example. For example, here, this question is question 19 from the digital practice test number 1 from the PDF version of the digital practice test. And this is an exponent question. Okay, I'm not going to solve it. You can solve it. And actually, the answers are going to be at the end of the video. You can solve all the examples that we're doing. I'm just going to explain how or what type of mistakes maybe. So first of all, it could be just that you have no idea. Like you see this and you don't comprehend what you're looking at, right? Like, I don't know where to begin. When you have that feeling that you have no idea even of when to begin, that's like a mistake of not knowing the topic. Like you don't even know what you're looking at, right? Another mistake is saying, okay, yes, this is exponential. And I remember certain rules of exponents. So I remember that a to the m times a to the n is equal to a to the m plus n. Yes, I remember these formulas. I just don't remember this specific formula, this specific law. Okay, in that case, that will be a knowledge mistake of not knowing the specific formula. Again, when it's about knowing, and again, this is something that you have to experience. I mean, a teacher cannot tell you what you know, you don't know. This is something that you either know or don't know, right? You categorize this into a knowledge mistake. Okay, moving on. Understanding mistakes. These type of mistakes occur mostly in word problems. Word problems are the problems that try to tell you a story using examples from real life or cases that you can see in real life. So here, the types of understanding mistakes are either not understanding the term, especially if you're a foreign student, if English is not your native language, then sometimes you just don't understand the word. That's literally like a vocabulary mistake. Sometimes even if you're very fluent in English, it's not that you don't understand the word, it's just that you don't understand how the word is working in that specific, probably that specific set. That is still not understanding the term. Another type of this mistake is not knowing how to interpret the information. It's like you kind of understand all the words, you understand every single word that you're reading, you just don't know what to do with it. That's still an understanding mistake. And finally, the interpreting the opposite information. This is very common when you have inequalities, when it's greater than, less than, at most, at least. Sometimes some students get confused by words and end up writing the opposite of what they're reading. All of these are understanding mistakes. Can there be more? Yes. If you see that you have another type of understanding mistake, but still falls into this category, just put it here. Okay, so again, as I told you, this pretty much happens with word problems. It may happen with other types of problems, but pretty much with these type of problems, right? Where they're trying to tell you a story. So there's a party and there's an event planner and they tell you prices. And so we're going to see mistake by mistake, not understanding the term. Maybe you don't know what an event planner is, but in this case, that doesn't really matter. By the way, as a side, as a principle, most of the time, we don't really care about very specific words. If they're not adding information to the question, even in verbal, right? We don't really care. We don't care about understanding. Remember, we don't care about understanding the whole thing. We do care about understanding some, but not the whole thing. Okay, so you don't know the word fee, right? So then that's going to be a bit tricky. Like if you don't know what the word fee means or what is an attendee, you're going to feel like this is a bit tricky. So that's kind of not understanding the term. I want to make a parenthesis here because, again, for the most part, you don't really need to know what this word means, right? So you don't know what the word fee means, okay, but you know that it's cost, right? So, I mean, if you don't know the word cost, then yeah, you're screwed. But if you don't know the word fee, but you do know the word cost, then you can still solve the question. This is another important thing. Don't get frustrated just by not understanding one term, because you may be able to get the information that you need from the context. Okay, but let's say you don't know the word cost, okay? Okay, so that will be a term mistake. Now, you don't know how to interpret information. Okay, so you know what is cost, you know what is a fee, you know what is an attendee, you know everything, you just don't know how to put it into an equation form, right? That will be not knowing how to interpret information. And finally, interpret the opposite information. In this case, will be a bit weird, I know, but the question is, what is the greatest number of attendees possible, right? So let's say you're solving the question, and by some, in this case, this is an inequality, and at some point, instead of doing this inequality, right, less than or equal to, which is greatest means we're finding the value has to be like this, right? So the greatest value for x will be 7, and let's say you just interpreted the opposite way and you ended up doing this, all right? So that will be interpreting the opposite information. Okay, again, I'm not solving them. You can solve it and you can look at the answers at the end of the video. You can pause right now and solve this question and see if you get it right. Then we have the procedure mistakes. So after we no longer have knowledge mistakes and we no longer have a interpreting mistakes, okay, so we may still make some mistakes, right? So now here's where we leave to the procedure mistakes. Now, I'm not saying that you get the first type of mistake and then you are over them, and then you get the second type of mistake and you're over them. No, you can have a procedure mistake at the same time as you have a knowledge mistake, right? But you have to know how to differentiate them. Okay, so a procedure mistake is having just putting the wrong sign, making the wrong operation, writing the wrong result, or doing the opposite, kind of like the way in which you write the opposite, like less than instead of more than. But in this case, it will be like adding instead of subtracting, multiplying instead of dividing, etc. So procedure mistakes usually happen with short questions or questions that are not really that hard, or sometimes it's because we get excited and we just solve them. Okay, but sometimes they go hand in hand with knowledge mistakes, which means we didn't copy the formula correctly. In this case, we're dealing with absolute values, so we know this has two possibilities, right? So the inside is either positive 112 or negative 112, right? And if we made the incorrect move, for example, we are going to deal with the first one, right? So 4x minus 4 is equal to positive 112, right? So if I want to move the negative 4 to the other side, a type of mistake that may happen is I may just move it as subtracting, and therefore I just got the wrong answer. I'm creating a mistake. Okay, another type of mistake that may appear here is just having the wrong operation. Well, that's pretty much the wrong operation. The wrong sign will be, well, in this case, you do have a positive and a negative, but let's say you forgot that you have a negative and you only deal with the positive. Then that will also be a type of mistake. The wrong result. Oh, what I meant by the wrong result is when you, let's say we do it correctly, and this is going to be 116. By the way, I know there's another way of doing it. I'm just saying this. And let's say I divide. So I divide by 4, right? And then I divide the 4, but I divide it incorrectly. So let's say I divide this and I get I'm gonna get like 27, right? So that's not the answer because I just divided incorrectly. That gives me the wrong result. Luckily now in this SAT, you are allowed to use a calculator. So probably this specific type of mistake won't happen unless you do it by hand, like unless you avoid the calculator. But if you do it by calculator, most of the time, you're not going to make one of these mistakes. Okay, again, you can solve it. And we're going to move on. Then we go to the silly mistakes. The silly mistakes are the kind of mistakes that you want to have, okay? They're still mistakes, and this is something very important I tell my students, is like sometimes people think silly mistakes are not mistakes, and they disregard them, and they don't take them into consideration, and they say, oh, no, I didn't make a mistake. I just copied the wrong number. I mean, I knew it was 6, but I copied 8. Well, if you don't get the answer, then that's a mistake and you're making a mistake, and you should be able to recognize the mistake in order to categorize it and in order to avoid it the next time. So, silly mistakes, I pretty much expanded and I put a lot of things into silly mistakes because all of these are in mistakes in my view. So, panicking is a type of mistake. So, when you panic and you don't even read the question because you're running out of time, or maybe you do have time but you're nervous because that specific topic always hard for you, so you don't even read it, that's a panicking mistake, and it's still a mistake. You should work on not panicking. You should work on being calm and being able to read the whole thing before deciding whether you can solve the question or not. Having the wrong topic or the wrong question or the wrong formula is like, okay, so you're solving for quadratics, but you're using the formula for a linear equation, then that's the wrong topic. It's like you kind of know a formula, it's just not the right formula. That is a mistake. Copying, and I'm going to make emphasis here, is not just passing to the other side or subtracting correctly. No, it's copying. It's like the question says 6, all right? It's like here, let's say the question says 112, and when you start solving on your piece of paper, you put 114. And you may think that it's not a mistake. Oh, of course, it's not a mistake. I just got confused and got distracted. Well, getting distracted in an exam is a mistake. It's something you should avoid. Again, remember, the word mistake for us just means something I don't want to make, something I have to avoid, right? It's not really a kind of completely negative thing. Okay, so copy the wrong number, the wrong sign, or the wrong operation. So instead of minus, you copy plus. Instead of multiplication, you copy division, etc. Solving for x instead of y. These mistakes comes from if you have watched the principles of math, you should always look at the question, right? You should always read the question to know what you're looking for. So sometimes you're solving for something. In this case, you may be solving for x, but they are not asking you for x, right? So you solve for x, you find the value of x, you check the answer, but then that wasn't the question. Then putting wrong values in the calculator. This is really, really important. Again, calculators don't make mistakes, but humans do, right? So if whatever you input is in the calculator is just going to give you the value for whatever you put in, right? So they're not going to correct them. So a very important way to correcting this mistake is one, paying a lot of attention. And the other is what I make my students do in class is I want you to practice doing operations in your head. So whenever a calculator gives you an answer that shouldn't be, you are surprised by it. It's like, in this case, for example, when I divided 116 over 4 and you get 27, if you do this a calculator, you should be surprised because a number ending in 4 times a number ending in 7 is never going to be a number ending in 16. Even if you don't completely do it, 4 times 7 is 28. So whatever this is going to end in an 8, not in a 6. So again, if you practice being aware of these procedures, then the calculator mistake is not going to surprise you. And finally, get it right, feel it wrong. And this is kind of the silliest of the silly mistakes, which is, okay, you solve the answer, you do your solution, you put x equals 4, and it's like A say A4, B6, C7, D8, and then you mark 6. You click on 6. Why? Who knows? You got distracted, you got excited, you were thinking of something else, you were running out of time. Who knows? Well, you should know, okay? But I also don't expect you to remember if you just did a practice test, right? But you have to be completely aware of what you're doing because, again, getting the answer right, but feeling or clicking on the wrong answer is a mistake. I don't want you to think, oh, no, I didn't make a mistake. I actually got the answer right. Yeah, but again, the people who are, well, in this case for digital SAT, they don't care. They don't care that you do know the topic, you just click on the wrong answer. They don't care. They just care that you click on the wrong answer, right? So this is a mistake. Whatever prevents you from having the right answer is a mistake. Okay, oh, well, I was planning on explaining this here. So panicking is just panicking. Wrong topic is, again, seeing that there's a cube and thinking you should do something with a simplification or factorization, but it's not about that. So that will also be a mistake. Another type of mistake, the sign mistake. So this is minus 6x cubed minus negative 3x. So you may end up having negative 3x, okay, or minus 3x without considering that it should be like minus minus. So it should be plus 3x, right? Another type of mistake, solving for x instead of y. Well, in this case, this kind of like not such a possible mistake because you can see the alternatives and nowhere in the alternatives they have x equals 4 or something like that. So you know you're not looking for x. Okay, now The final type of mistake, which is technically not a mistake. This is not a mistake, which means this too long means you got the answer right, but you took 2 minutes, right? So you don't want to use 2 minutes in a question that should take 30 seconds. So this is also something you have to consider. Technically, this is not a mistake. I do advise all of you that if you are taking too long to solve a question, even if you get the answer right, you review it and you consider as something you had to work on. Usually this kind of quote unquote mistake is happen because you don't simplify, you don't apply the formula, so you do it by other means, you operate unnecessarily. For example, in this case, operate unnecessarily. Here in this question, we didn't really have to move the 4 to the other side, and it's kind of a spoiler, but if you already have this, right? And you're not looking for x, you're looking for x minus 1. The best thing to do is to factorize the 4, right? So 4 times x minus 1 equals 112. That way I just had to move the 4 to the other side dividing. I already have the answer. I don't need to do 4x equals 112 plus 4. I don't need to do that, right? And that, again, in this specific case will be like 10 extra seconds, but sometimes it's like 30 extra seconds or 1 extra minute, okay? And solving for x unnecessarily, which is kind of the same thing of the previous example. Like if they're asking for x plus 1 and not for x, then don't solve for x, right? Don't find x and then add 1 because that will take some time. Again, you can see the video of principles of math where I cover some of these topics for not taking too long. Okay, same thing happens here. Again, I'm not going to solve it. You can solve it and see the answers at the end of the video. But they're asking you for the diameter of the circle, right? So some of you may know how to solve this question, and some of you may want to find x and then find y and then find the radius. But you don't really need to find x and y. You just need to find the radius. So it will be a complete waste of time to find x and then find y and then find the radius because there is no need to. Again, you will get the answer, okay, if you do it right step by step like that, but it's unnecessary and a waste of time. Okay, so how we're going to use this information? Well, we have to first, we want to understand our mistake. So every time you make a mistake, you just don't put it in the same bag. Don't say, okay, I did my practice test and I got 8 mistakes. Then move on. No. You're gonna take those 8 mistakes and you're gonna start to understand each of them. Okay, what was the mistake in this question and in this question and in this question, and you're gonna categorize them. So okay, I have 8 mistakes, and of those 8 mistakes, like 4 are understanding mistakes and 3 are silly mistakes, and 1 is a too long. Well, too long will be a mistake. So 1 is going to be a understanding a term mistake. Okay. So you have to put them into categories. Why do you want to put it into categories? Because you want to find if there's a pattern. You want to find whether there's one that you make the most so you can work on it. So if you typically copy the wrong sign, or if you typically, I don't know, like, again, use too much time for a question, you want to work on that very specific thing. As an extra, you can color code them. I noticed like a lot of my students color code them, and that helps a lot because it helps you visually to recognize the mistake. Like if you make a type of mistake, you put it like all of my information mistake, my knowledge mistakes are going to be red and my silly mistakes are going to be green. And that way you can recognize and visually see what type of mistake you're making the most. And finally, you always want to redo the questions you got wrong until you get them wrong no more. Okay, this is really, really important. That's the most important part of practice. It's not just doing new questions every single time. It's doing every question in the material that you have and then going back for the mistakes and see if you already corrected your mistakes. Okay, again, you don't want to do this like the day after because you're going to remember, right? But you want to do, let's say, after a month of practice, at the beginning of the new month, at the beginning of the second month, you want to go and redo the mistakes that you did on the first day, right? So let's say you're studying 3 months in advance for your SATs. So you start with practice test 1, then you do practice test 2, and then you move on. And then you go back to practice test 1. You don't just keep moving on and keep looking for new exercises. No, what you want to do is you go back and you make sure that you have understood, and then you're no longer making that mistake. Okay, here are the answers for the questions. I'm gonna put a link for this PDF on the description of the video. Remember that the PDF is for free, but you had to put your email. I don't charge for those. And as always, this is a link for my webpage, and I'm available for for classes. and just answering questions. And remember to check out the other videos. That's it. If you have any questions, also you can just put them in the chat, well, in the comments, and you can also write an email to my email. And that's it. And see you in the next video. Bye.